All right, all right. Let's get our Facebook groups in here before we get the show on the road. Uh-oh, one of them had an issue there. Let's try that one more time.
That's the big Facebook group too. We need them.
It went. We're good. That was weird. All right. Welcome in. Welcome in. It is Monday morning, President's Day, and it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendall and joined by, as always, Scott Kennedy. Scott, it's mock draft Monday. We're going to get a chance to talk about it today. I want to talk a little bit about NFL.com's ranking of the 2023 draft class. The Broncos had, spoiler alert, not good. And also get into options besides quarterback in the first round for the Broncos. It's very quarterback dominated right now. I get it. If Broncos don't have a quarterback, your train doesn't leave the station. But there's a reality where you don't get the guy you want at 12 overall, or you cannot make the trade up. So what does that look like? Is it, DEFCON 1 in that scenario for Broncos country? Maybe based on what some of the Twitter interactions are like. But how are you doing, Scott?
I'm doing great. I think the next month before the draft is going to be absolutely fascinating for the Denver Broncos. We'll get an idea what's the direction of this team. Is it because there's three. There's heaven, hell, and there's purgatory in there. Right now, I feel like you're in purgatory.
We're in hell. We're in hell.
I don't think so. 8 and 9 is not hell, man. I've seen hell. It ain't it. You're in purgatory.
Okay.
Do you sell off? Do you re-sign and extend and try and improve where you're still kind of stuck there in that 8 and 9? Maybe I can improve to 10 and 7. Or do I say, listen, we've got to get out from under these other deals too and accumulate more picks and hopefully draft more productive players? You do that by taking more shots and not packaging 3 picks for one guy. That ends up being bad odds. Or, are you taking another shot? Or do you do half measures and just trade one guy? To me, that's purgatory. It's like, oh, we're moving on for Bolles, but we're extending Simmons and Sutton. It's like, hell, that's a half measure. That's not quite. Now you've opened up a big hole at left tackle. So all of those things with free agency coming before the draft, which opens up here in the next 3 weeks, the next month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks before the draft are going to tell us a lot about what this Denver Broncos plan and their goals are for 2024. It might be just to survive, take as big a cap hit as possible on Russell Wilson's contract, survive 2024, and come out swinging in 2025.
Yeah, and Scott, I just am not a huge believer of what we saw last season. I think it was it's an unsustainable method of playing. The Broncos had unbelievably far and away, the highest EPA gained off of fumble recoveries last season. I think the distance between the EPA gain from the Broncos to the number 2 team is about as high as it was from the number 2 team to like the number 27 team in the NFL, which that's if you're looking at like a graph, you wouldn't even see the Broncos on the chart. They'd have to like way expand the access to get them to fit there. Also, I think the Broncos were one of the top 6 healthiest teams in football last season, and it still got you just to 8 and 9, where you're going to be probably taking some steps back in roster talent this season. And I don't think the overall ramification of the Russell Wilson contract has even fully been felt yet, Scott. We're going to talk a little bit about that 2023 draft class, and it's always, it's too early. Typically, it's 2 to 3 years after that draft class where you really start to get an idea and these guys make an impact. Well, guess what? The Russell Wilson picks that we gave up, we're 2 to 3 years, or 2 years now. We're going to start feeling the hit and the hurt of losing.
Here's my counter to that.
Okay.
We underestimated how hard it is to come in as a new staff and a new coach and turn around things and turn around the culture. And you should have been at least 3-2, 4-2, at least 3-3 after 6 games. You were 1-5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right now, and then you go 6-1. You weren't as bad as 1-5. You weren't as good at 6-1. Right now, we are discounting the ability from year 1 to year 2 of a new staff, new culture, new everything, and the improvements that you hope to make that are not just personnel-based, new personnel-based, but improvements from within your team from being coached from year 1 to year 2. That's why you spent a first-round pick on Sean Payton. To discount the ability of them to make improvements with not really losing too many guys and the ability to still add impact players through cheap free agents, or an impact player in the draft, we're discounting that now to say that they can't improve. So I think I think we underestimated how hard it is to come in and make those changes and to turn things around. And I think now we're discounting the possibility of incremental improvements as a team with a new coach.
I think you can have incremental improvements this season as an overall team and still finish with a worse record because of a lot of the numbers I was talking about with this team last season. And also, I don't know if you are going to have a better roster. I think that Garrett Bolles and Cortland Sutton shopping for new houses out here.
Which is why we'll know if we go full rebuild, throw all that out. But it is possible for this team to be better next year. Are you willing to take baby steps, or do you want to take 2 steps back to try and take 5 steps forward?
Yeah. Question always comes down to what's the upside? Right. What is, if everything goes right, what is the ceiling, the feasible ceiling for that? And if it's not Super Bowl, in my opinion, this isn't like college football where we're cheering for, I guess I'm going to throw a stray out here, but like the University of Minnesota or something. It's like, okay, you're not competing for national championships, but like, can we get to 10 wins maybe once every 5 years? That'd be great. This is the NFL. It's every single team should be shooting for that Super Bowl with the salary cap and the draft and the way things are set up for parity in the league. I know we don't have to have that discussion, Scott, but again, the 2 big ones that come out to me again, I think this is a team that you're not even going to have the ramifications of the Russell Wilson contract really, besides his play on the field, until this season, next season, with the way the draft picks work, right? It's like the last part of their contract. And also the Russell Wilson contract signing that you gave him doesn't even kick in until this year. This is when it finally hits.
Spot Rack did a really good job, and this is what we made the topic yesterday of. Last night on MHH Pod, they did a really good job of breaking down the numbers and the options that the Denver Broncos have with Russell Wilson's contract. I'm convinced the best option is one of the options is they can eat up to, I think it's $85 million across 2 years regardless, but they could end up eating like $52 million.
You could do it over 1 year.
You could. I don't know how you get $100 million. You're already 22 under. Okay. Yep. You're 22 over the cap right now. I don't know how you add 85 to that and go to $107 million over the cap and cut enough contracts to get $110 million back and still be able to sign your draft class.
I've seen it done. Essentially what it does is every single veteran contract that wasn't the one signed last season is moved on from, and then everybody who was signed last season is restructured. Yeah. So Allen, Powers, and McGlinchey's contracts are essentially vet mins, but you get that 85 over. So you kind of have to do that anyway, Scott, because the way the post June 1st works is, I don't know if this was in the Spot Rack article, but you don't even get the money for that until June 1st. So you can designate it from a salary cap perspective, but like the salary cap, the money to actually spend on the cap isn't available until June 1st. So it's almost like you're already 1 season on that. So you're probably going to have to do 2 just because of how the salary cap works.
The best option for me though was you could take, it was like 50, I'll just call it 50. You could take $50 million this year, 2024, and then it would knock down to $32 million in 2025. Okay. While that sounds $32 million dead cap, that sounds rough, but Russell Wilson's cap hit for 2025 balloons to $55 million.
Yeah.
So you're actually getting close to $25 million available in free agency spending that you wouldn't have had, which is why you move on from that contract when you did. It's not official yet, I know, but that's why Russell Wilson was benched and the decision was made is like, listen, we need to be able to get into 2025 with a new quarterback, with money to spend, and then we set up our team in 2025 and we truly come out swinging in 2026. You survive again, and what you want to do in 2024 is going to depend a lot on these next 6 weeks.
Yeah, without a doubt. So I think you're probably a little bit more optimistic on where I see this team is, and also just, again, James Palmer and a lot of rumblings that Bolles might be on the move. The Broncos might even have approached him with a contract, and he said no thank you, and now his agents might be, working the combine a little bit to see what's out there. Maybe, but not a maybe. Quentin Caldwell coming in and supporting the show. Thank you so much. Just drop a like, subscribe if you guys can't be like Quentin. That's always appreciated. We appreciate that ourselves. But the super chat, definitely the number one way to keep the show rolling here and make sure that this guy is available to go on, 3 hours of sleep and still want to come in and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So Quentin says, good morning, everyone. I still like to trade down if we can't get one of the top three, talking about obviously Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. It might be a top four by the time April comes around, Quentin. He says, get more draft picks and swing, bada, swing. Yeah, I think, it depends on how the board falls. Scott, like you've heard me on here. I am not about taking a cornerback at 12 overall, but if you evaluate Terry and Arnold with like a blue chip potential Hall of Fame grade, I don't really care that you don't, in an ideal team building situation, you take a corner. If you're not getting great draft picks back and you view this guy as a potential Hall of Famer at the position, take the talent and figure it out later. But ideally, you're never going to be certain. The trade back, if it's not a quarterback, is probably the best scenario, but it takes two to tango, and there's possibility that the guy they love falls there still.
Yeah, and let's see, that came up Denver Broncos right away. So you talk about, I've got Pat Surtain. If you had Terrion Arnold and you view him as a potential Hall of Fame, yes, it'd be really, really nice. I know what I'll do. I'll just go to my fifth-year option chart. It'd be really, really nice to pair the two of them. But Surtain's fifth-year option's going to be $18.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Or $18.5 million and Pat Surtain on the last year of his contract before he's going to get probably a record-setting cornerback deal. Or Terrion Arnold and 2 first-round picks and $18 million in available salary cap money. It starts becoming a question. You have to be out of your mind. I kind of laugh at the people in the comments when we talk about what would Pat Surtain be worth. And they'd be like, you'd be out of your mind to trade Pat Surtain. It's just stupid. Anybody even thinks that. Unless you were to get, well, yeah, that's the whole point. Unless you were to get a deal you cannot turn down in your team building, he is really your only building block, tradable asset that is going to give you a return to add impact players. He's the only one. Everybody else you're talking about, okay, a day 2, maybe day 3 pick and salary cap relief. That's it. If I want to get picks and I want to try and recoup some of the Russell Wilson mess, it's Pat Surtain.
You're probably a year early on the Surtain trade. I think you and I have talked about it in here, but in the past decade, I think there's only been 3 cornerbacks outside of their first 6 years in the NFL to make an all-pro team. It's not like running back where they absolutely fall off a cliff like after year 4 and a second contract is, really typically pretty poor if it's a big contract. But quarterback, man, they fall off fast and hard. So you've already used 3 of Surtain's 6 to 7 years of his peak and prime, and now you're going to have to pay him. It's I think you're a year early on the trade of potentially moving Surtain, but if this team stinks like out loud in 2024, like talk about a top 5, top 10 pick, you might not be in a position where you want to pay Surtain for 2, maybe 3 more years of good play before falling off. So it's a tough conversation with where you're at right now as a team, without a doubt. The other thing I come back to, and I've talked about it with Cody Alexander, but cornerbacks are obviously still valuable. And if you have a good one out there, it's probably the 4th or 5th most valuable position on the field. But where cornerbacks get a lot of value is their ability in man coverage. And you don't unlock man coverage unless you can get after the passer before. I don't care if you have 2 all-pros out there. If your defensive front is terrible and can't get home, you're still going to be playing zone. And I worry about that with the Broncos and the value of that cornerback early. You're just not going to be maximizing it if you can't get home. So it's secondary to the defensive line still, despite what some analytics say, in my opinion.
Think about the teams whose defense let them down, who are good teams whose defense let them down. 2 immediately came to mind for me. Dallas Cowboys, Detroit Lions. They offer you 2 firsts and a second for Pat Surtain. You're listening.
Oh, yeah. 2 firsts and a second?
Yeah, you're listening. But remember, those are going to be 25 to 30, 25 to 30, and 60.
It's still a lottery pick for that future one, though. It could end up being a top 10 pick. Those future firsts are always a nice one to have in your back pocket. Just ask the Chicago Bears. Not the same, but you never know. If Dak Prescott gets hurt,
and you take Terrion Arnold in the first, and you've got cost control for another 5 years in your window. But again, best case scenario for the Denver Broncos is to really be competing. I won't say best case because things change, things happen, but it feels like this team is set up to really start competing 2026. 2024 is survived the cap. 2025 is we're coming out of it. We're improving. Maybe make a playoff run. 2026, maybe we can do more than that. And again, you're at best on a new contract, a record-setting deal with Pat Surtain. He's going to be a $20+ million a year. He'll break 9 figures on his deal in guaranteed money more than likely.
Yep.
So, yes, it's on the table. Now he's been in the league for 3 more years, and you're on a record-setting deal. You'll have the money at that point. That's the good news.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, and I could pair him with Terrion Arnold and be set. I could be set for the next 8 years at cornerback. Again, those are good options. Those are good options. Have good options for us. Michael Ranquillo says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Thank you for the stars, Michael. And Lawrence comes in. He asks, are we going to be forced to do Hard Knocks this year? I don't know anything about that. I've watched 5 minutes of Hard Knocks. A guy got in it, cut. I basically cried and said, I don't want to watch this anymore. I don't like reality TV. My reality TV is sports, not people getting their hearts broken.
I really hope that the Broncos aren't on Hard Knocks because I don't want to have to cover Hard Knocks in here because I don't really care to watch it. I probably will have to, although, man, it's hard to find TV watching time that isn't, 3 a.m. Nick watching prospects while trying to get the baby to sleep. But we got Scott coming in here, other Scott, saying, why does anyone want to keep Cushenberry 3 joke years and one of the best, a little over average? He's still just as bad as Miners and Powers carried him. I don't think Miners and Powers carried him. I think Cushenberry definitely took a step forward this season. And typically you see a lot of times with centers specifically that it can take a few seasons from the mental side of things just because there's so many checks and whatnot and the read. So having a cerebral guy sometimes takes some time. And also Cushenberry's contract, the center market just isn't big. We talked about it last year, Scott, like, oh, we can look at this guy. We can look at this guy. Do we have the money? They almost all signed under what we expected. So I'm curious to see what the market is. But that said, the Broncos aren't really in a position to pay Cushenberry. Now, if you move Bolles and you free up a little cash, maybe that's a conversation, but there's too much internal prompting of Forsyth and Wattenberg that I think that's probably the option here. And maybe even the Broncos are playing the compensatory pick game. The Bears, I think, are going to be very interested in signing a center. I'm sure there'll be other teams too. So Cushenberry, I don't want to take away. Cushenberry was good this season. I don't think he was, a top 5 center by any means, but he was definitely, I would say, average to above average, and there's still value to that.
I think Cushenberry can get 10 money, top 10.
Yeah, he should. He will.
Yeah, as a free agent, as an average center. So take it to 15. Like, what's 15 make? And then give it a little bump because he's on the open market. He'll get a raise from that. And the number 10 center, Connor McGovern, made $7.5 million. The number 9, Austin Corbett, was at $8.8 million. So I think I'll split the difference because I'll say 8 to 10. I think $9 million a year guaranteed is about right for him and what he'll get on the open market. And there's a lot of chatter from Bears fans about, we want this guy, we want this guy, we want this guy. I'm like, great, take him. If you sit out free agency this year while you're trying to recover from cap hell, you might be able to get a day 3 comp pick. What would that be?
It'd probably be a 5th rounder.
5, yeah, 5th rounder for it. But again, I look at how easy would it be to replace what you got from Lloyd Cushenberry this year. I don't think it'd be that hard. How easy would it be to replace what you've got from him the last 4 years? That'd be pretty easy. I don't think he's a must bring back at all.
I think it's maybe a little bit of a luxury, and you just probably don't have the rainy day fund this season or next season to do that. The one thing that scares me, Scott, is that, and again, it's the frothing of the mouth from Broncos country, which I get. I was there when I thought the team was in their window. I don't think they're there now. But pairing a rookie quarterback with an unproven center scares the hell out of me because you don't want to put everything on the plate of that young quarterback. Ideally, you put the checks and the line checks and pointing out the mic and everything on the plate of the center if it is a rookie quarterback. And if it's a rookie quarterback with Alex Forsyth, I just don't think that's not a recipe for success for me for the young quarterback. So that's the one benefit there, I guess, or the one thing I do want to put out there. And you can probably find a veteran center for vet men if you're that worried about that. So again, it's not that big of a deal, but I don't think it's as simple as start Forsythe and start a rookie quarterback. I think that combination is one that sets up that rookie quarterback for failure.
We could really, really screw everybody up by signing free agent center Matt Hennessy.
God bless.
Matt Hennessy was a center for the Atlanta Falcons. He signed a 4-year deal. It was his rookie deal. Was competing at left guard. He got beat out by Drew Dahlman, who ended up ranking top 5 again at center for the Atlanta Falcons. Dahlman was the pick the Broncos sent the Atlanta Falcons in the Javonte Williams trade up deal. That pick ended up being better than the pick that the Falcons took in the second, safety Richie Grant. Matt Hennessy was competing at left guard this year and got hurt, so he's coming off an injury. He would be a $2 million a year type, 50-year guy in the league with a bunch of starts under his belt. Going into last year, I would have much rather had Hennessy than Cushenberry. Cheap option. There's guys like that out there. The problem is now you've got Matt Henningsen on one side of the ball and Matt Hennessy on the other side of the ball, and we can't keep those guys straight anyway. Nick, you'd be in big trouble.
I know that the Broncos, there was the Elway draft, but I think they liked Hennessy more than they liked Cushenberry that cycle, and they were going to take him, but there was murmurs that Ojemudia was going to be taken, I think, by the Rams, maybe. So they played a little bit of, hoping and praying here, a little lottery, and hoping that Hennessy would make it to the Broncos on the next pick. They didn't. They ended up taking Cushenberry. So again, that's secondhand source. So I mean, I don't know if that's the reality, but I could see that happening.
78th. He went 78th in the third, and he's got 41 starts. And Cushenberry went 83rd in the same draft. Yep. Hennessy, coming off of an injury, will be significantly cheaper. Unfortunately for him, good for whoever signs him, because I think he's been better over the course of his 4 years than Cushenberry has. It's a low bar. Did he play as well? Yeah, I'd still think that. I think his second year as a center, I think, was as good as Cushenberry had this year. Again, there's options like that out there. You just have to find them.
Yeah, back to the point, though, that the poster made. Maybe Hennessy was good because playing next to somebody named, I don't know, Lindstrom. That was pretty...
But he also played next to Jalen Mayfield.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Before we get into the 2023 grades, I do want to say hello to some people. David Youngkin comes in, says edge, cornerback, safety, tight end, defensive line, offensive line, tackle. So everything but tight end and running back and linebacker. God bless you, David. Kevin Gray says, morning. Always good to see you, Kevin. Hopefully you're doing well. I got Jeremy comes in, says, morning, boys. They could draft edge, corner, defensive line, or tackle. Outside chance Bowers, but it should be a quarterback. We'll see. Jeremy, I appreciate you. Jeremy's one of my favorite people in here, and I'm really trying hard for him to picture the Knicks stuff. And I keep coming back to, obviously, if Peyton wants it and he's appealed to authority, I know it's an appeal to authority fallacy, but Peyton knows more than I do, and he knows what fits his system better. And if he wants Knicks, I want Knicks.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I don't want Peyton to talk himself into it, where you're like, okay, I have to have a quarterback, so I'm completely biased by this. And it happens to everybody.
Yep.
I need a quarterback. I fall in love with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Where if I didn't need a quarterback, there's 10 other people saying, hey, he's not that good. Oh, but I need one. This is the guy I want. I think Bo Nix would be a pretty good fit for what Sean Payton does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's physically a number 12 overall. I don't think you need to have a top 10 toolsy quarterback to play really well for Sean Payton. So, but if you get it and he plays really well for Sean Payton, he's absolutely worth a 12. He's worth a 1. If you get your quarterback and he's playing well. And again, if he came in, if you drafted him at 12, I'd start him. I would absolutely start him within the first month right away. He'll be 24, 60 college games under his belt with 17 different offensive coordinators. The man knows how to pick up the system. If Bo Nix is drafted, I would start him right away. Robot of Doom says, why is there no talks of moving off Jerry Jeudy? He's not even been decent since we drafted him. Rather keep Sutton than him. I think he's been decent. He just hasn't been wide receiver 1. I think he was a second wide receiver taking that draft behind Henry Ruggs, maybe. And then you look behind it and some of the guys that were taking Justin Jefferson after him, and it makes you lament. But he's been an almost 1,000-yard receiver a couple years in a row. He's had similar numbers to what Christian Kirk had before he got his giant contract. He's been decent. He's just been kind of a malcontent. He doesn't go out there and do everything with a big smile on his face. Has never had that "I'm just happy to be here" look, which rubs people the wrong way. But my point on this one, Robot of Doom, is there's been lots of talks of moving on from Jerry Jeudy. And flat out, if he was $13 million non-guaranteed, he'd be a cut candidate. But he's got $13 million guaranteed. So you could trade him for whatever you can get if someone's willing to pick up his $13 million. If you say I'd take a 5th rounder and $13 million for Jerry Jeudy, yeah, I probably would. It's more about getting that money back for him at this point than any type of return. And if you don't need the money because you're going to go into cap hell for 1 year regardless, then maybe you buy that pickup. Okay, we'll pay $10 million of his salary. You send me a 3rd instead of a 5th. So those are the options. But there's been lots of talks, Robot of Doom, about moving on from Jerry Jeudy.
I think it's economics. In the end, Jerry Jeudy would certainly be a cut candidate, or not a cut candidate, trade candidate, if he had a better year last year and there was more value for him right now. But I think that with the Russell Wilson chaos-oriented quarterback play and not really running what Sean Payton wants to do in terms of structure and timing, Jeudy had a pretty poor season overall from a statistical output, and Courtland Sutton fit much more to that style of chaos quarterback, toss it up football. Now you're probably going to have more middle of the field, making sure that you're making the right read based on pre-snap stuff. And, this looks like man coverage. I'm throwing to Jeudy on the slant. I know I have that there versus what we saw with Russell Wilson last season. So I think it's more of you're selling high on Wilson and not selling low on Jeudy. The other thing is that Jeudy could play well enough with a different style of quarterback this season, maybe being elevated to number 1, that let's say your team's struggling, but Judy's having stats. You might get more value from him at the trade deadline than you would right now from him in again, more timing-oriented quarterback. You might get a better return on a 2026 compensatory pick for Jeudy if you play him this season. He does well. I mean, we know what the wide receiver free agent market looks like than what you'd get from a trade for Jeudy right now. So I think it comes down to more so the economics of it. Jeudy, with the contract he's on, is not going to be super highly sought after, in my opinion, in comparison to Courtland Sutton. So you're banking on elevating that stock with the situation changing around him.
I agree. There's been lots of talks. It's just that doesn't seem to be a whole lot of demand is where it comes down to, that Sutton might be the guy that's more in demand. And he's not playing on that contract for the Denver Broncos. There's 3 guys that will not play on their current contracts almost definitely for the Denver Broncos for the entirety of the 2024 season: Garrett Bolles, Justin Simmons, Courtland Sutton, and Tim Patrick. I've already waived him. I've already cut him in my mind. Lawrence Rivera asks, how can we add 3 second-round picks to grab decent players at inside linebacker, fullback, and tight end?
Fullback in the second round?
You might be able to get 3 seconds if you just were to trade your number 12. And if you traded a number 12 for an inside linebacker, for a draft pick and fullback and tight end in the second round and draft those guys, you're fired. You can go look at maybe 4th and 5th round for those guys, and you can get decent players. That's the thing about the non-premium positions. Why I love those 3rd and 4th round picks. You can get good players at non-premium positions at the beginning of end of day 2, beginning of day 3, 3rd and 4th rounders. That's why I don't like giving those up. I like having those. I can go non-premium. I can go center, guard, safety, linebacker, tight end, and you don't draft fullbacks. You sign those guys as free agents.
I mean, the fullback tight end starting to become a little bit
right, H-backs
overlapping there. Yeah, they're same position for some of those guys. I mean, you talk about potentially here for the Broncos at 12, Brock Bowers. Well, he's going to have fullback looks as much as he is going to have, F tight end slot. I mean, you're going to move him around. So getting into it, also did want to say hello. John Lopez says trenches if not quarterback. I'm here. Tofu says, I'm hoping we don't even pick at 12, either trading up for Mayor Daniels or trading back. That's certainly a possibility. Jeremy says, I could see Bowers sliding to Chargers move out of 5. Certainly possible. Love Conga says loose Bowers syndrome. That's been going on in Denver for a bit. They have an outbreak for sure. String guys here. Good to see you. Mr. Roush, morning Broncos for breakfast. Good morning to you, Mr. Roush. Chris Beeston's in here. Always good to see you. We got Desert Creature saying reincarnation. Always great to see you. Zach Powers, Fire Sale. Been talking about this nuke button for years. We'll see what happens. It's there. We got Desert Creature saying move on from anybody but Bolles. I think that's we'll see what happens with that one. But we appreciate you coming in. Gary sounds like Bolles wants out. If that's the case, trade him, get what you can, start a fire sale. Yeah, we will. We'll see what happens with Bolles. The thing is, the one thing I will say is I am very confident he's not playing on his contract for next season. So it's either not a restructure because there's only 1 year left. It's either a new deal with the money being moved around a bit, or he's out of here. So we will see. We will certainly see. Sean Burns is in the house.
Nick, you save $16 million if you were to just flat out cut Garrett Bolles.
He's too talented to be a flat out cut, in my opinion. But
it's a possibility. If he says no, I'm not extending, and I can't get anybody to trade for him that wants to eat part of his deal, I think you could get something for him though. Listen, we'll send you Garrett Bolles and $10 million, and you're going to send us a 3rd round pick. You could buy it up. It would be a 4th round pick maybe with 1 year left on his deal and that kind of money, but you could buy it up the way they did with Von Miller.
Exactly. And also this draft class specifically, really good tackle class, Scott. The left tackles aren't there. The left tackles do not really exist. I mean, you could maybe argue that some of these guys flip over, but Talise Fuaga, right tackle. J.C. Latham, right tackle. Amarius Mims, maybe left tackle, but right now, right tackle. Tyler Guyton, right tackle. Fashano's a left tackle. Joe Alt's a left tackle. I think Morgan's going to end up a guard. He's right now playing left tackle. I think Fontenot's going to end up a guard. He's right now playing left tackle. Was it the guy from BYU whose name I can't pronounce? Right tackle. There's just not a lot of left tackles. So if you're looking for a team that they maybe miss out on their tackle early, or looking to make that plug and play move, they're in their window right now, or want to protect their rookie quarterback, I think there's going to be a market for Garrett Bolles. He's just been too consistently solid. It's one reason why it hurts so much to move on from him, but it does seem like it's progressing that way. I don't know. We'll see. Sean, good to see you.
BYU Kingsley Swamatala. Is that an L or an I? I can't tell.
I think it's an I.
Yeah. 6'4.5".
Yep.
Decent size arms though, and a good reach. Almost a 7-foot wingspan.
He might be guard. He's a little stiff. But
I think he's a little bit stiff too.
Yeah.
Okay. A good day 2 offensive tackle, not one I want to take at 12 and not.
Have you heard about the guy from Have you heard about the guy from Yale? The offensive tackle from Yale. He has like something like 86 wingspan, 87 wingspan. It's just like he's a pterodactyl. Dane Brugler just wrote about him, but there's been some top 100 hype from him for a bit out of Yale. We got Kathy coming in and says, I'm late, had to do some cleaning. That's all good. I say draft a darn quarterback or 2. If they love one, that would be great. And Zach comes in here, says, Nick, being an Iowa fan, what gave you that idea? Why have you not talked about Cooper DeJean as a top 10 prospect? I think he's the only blue chip defensive player in this draft class. The issue with DeJean is, we could have a whole episode about this, but Iowa is really hard to project from the defensive back position at boundary corner because you see absolutely no press man reps out there. They are going to play press bail technique till the cows come home, and they're going to keep everything in front of them, and they're going to bet that Big Ten West quarterbacks cannot hit those tight window throws consistently. And if you do try it, the opposite hash especially, they're going to pick it off. So very much a bend, don't break defense. And because of that, you don't see that aggressive type of coverage that's press man and having to rely on the short, quick subtle movements at the cornerback spot. So watching Cooper DeJean, I don't know if he is the most quick twitch athlete in the world. He's definitely big and strong, and he can play cornerback at the NFL. But where he brings up so much value is the intelligence, the run fits, the size, the versatility. I mean, I think his probably best spot is being a Minkah Fitzpatrick Swiss Army knife on the back end, where like Minkah played boundary corner at Bama, and he was unbelievable, but you're not getting as much of the value in the run game and the ball skills with him there. So I think honestly, DeJean's best spot's probably slot, where he can maybe do some safety stuff as well, where he's essentially a linebacker out there at slot. He's so good in the run fit. Another reason why not top 10, because of the position he plays, it's really hard for me to project him being top 10 with him. I don't think he's going to compete in the combine because he's dealing with a broken tibia recovery. Now, we will have the pro days, but that is not as verifiable, I guess is the word here.
Because it still counts though in the eyes of scouts.
I
always laughed at people. Oh, that was because we did combines, we did hand times, I did stopwatches. It was always me and a guy that was a trainer that I took with me everywhere, where he did the same one, so that never changed. Oh, well, that was hand time. You know what every single scout at a pro day carries? Every single one of them. There's 100 guys there. You know what you see? Every single one of them, stopwatches. Every single one's carrying a stopwatch. So it matters.
It does
But,
matter.
when you see 4.25, okay, well, that's not a combine time, but it still matters. He goes out and runs well at his pro day. It matters.
I agree with you there. That's actually not the point I was going to make to why the pro day is different. It's because it's not standardized compared to the comparison population. Right. Like if we're running a double blind study here, your baseline that you're comparing against, if you're using combine data, is totally different than your pro day stuff. Like the track is different. The mental conditions that these guys have to go to is different. So I don't really it's not the hand time stuff for me as much. It's just how standardized the data is for pro days compared to the combine.
Nick, you'll appreciate this. When I ran my combines, one of the data points, height, weight, 40, shuttle, L-cone, vertical, was location. So that way you knew, because at least in that I could sort by location and compare everybody at the same spot. Because I'd tell them, I was like, don't worry about what you run. I might have measured this thing 43 yards just to mess with your heads. You're running against this track, and everybody's here running the same thing. So yeah, I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I wanted the senior. It was crazy, the COVID year where we didn't have the combine, but everybody at the was doing the Senior Bowl stuff. Well, they were only using the pro day data, and not Senior Bowl, but pro day data. And hey, we're breaking combine records left and right. So I don't know. I'm always a little bit of a skeptical of some of the pro day data just because it's not standardized, historically speaking. But good question, Zach. Any chance to talk about Cooper DeJean? The Broncos trade back from 12 overall and end up in the 20 pick range. Even though safety is not a premium pick, I think DeJean is going to be a hit regardless. So we'll get into it a little bit more here. Quentin comes in and says, good morning. Thanks for the great show. Appreciate you. I mean, he says it's a great show even 10 minutes in here. So God bless you. Gary Palmer, 1999 says, morning, Nick and Scott. I'm confused about the options for Russ, but that's a math problem. The real problem is, how can we be competitive this year? I think you can be competitive this year. It probably results in, once again, kicking the can down the road and maybe to the point where it hurts your ability to be better in flexibility in the future. But if your goal is competitive in 2024, you could sign, a solid quarterback out there. You can go out there and, really set up these contracts to go for some guys this season. Is that the best for the long term of this team? What's the ceiling for that kind of method? Do you want to be competitive in 2024, or do you want to be hopefully competing for a Super Bowl by 2027? I think those are the questions that I come with here. I'd much rather take a step back and then hopefully reevaluate yourself and get yourself some assets where you have that chance, because unless you draft Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, and they come in and they're at a top 8 quarterback year one, like CJ, if you plug CJ Stroud on this team, maybe things happen. The odds of that at pick 12, I don't want to say astronomical, but very slim. So I think I just don't see that happening.
All right, you ready, Nick? Get out some bullet points on this. How do you become competitive this year? Go Broncos. Gary, Jarrett Stidham plays at a level equal to or better than Russell Wilson last year at 26 touchdowns plus rushing. He was almost 30 touchdowns against about 10 turnovers, 11 turnovers. That's 1. 2, Alex Forsythe internally steps up and plays as well as Lloyd Cushenberry did at center. 3, Mike McGlinchey takes a step up in his second year after being healthy for a year after missing all of the preseason last year. 4, I sign extensions to 3 key players, Cortland Sutton, Justin Simmons, and Garrett Bolles, and lower my salary cap hit and survive that. Those are the big ones, because when you start looking at the players you lost, there's a question about comp picks and free agency. Who could you get as comp picks in free agency? Your most expensive guy last year was Josie Jewell of your free agents at 5.5. Then Will Lutz was actually your second most expensive guy that's due to be a free agent at kicker at $4 million. Mike Purcell was 3. You go down K'Wan Williams, Cameron Fleming, PJ Locke, Michael Burton, Fabian Moreau, Lloyd Cushenberry. Basically, Josie Jewell and Lloyd Cushenberry, your only 2 players I think you could sign and maybe get comp picks for. That's really it, which means you're not losing really anything out there. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you're not taking a hit on this team, which is why at the top of the show I said this will be very interesting to see the direction of this team for 2024. If they want to try and keep taking steps forward, you do that with extensions for your big 3 contracts. Otherwise, it's a rebuild, and you're purging yourself of any money with those 3 veterans, which is a possibility. You're getting as many picks as possible, and you're setting yourself up to survive 2024 and be competitive again in 2025.
That's probably the route in that situation. Oh, sorry. We got Mike. Mile High Mike also asked, why would you move on from Bolles? The offensive line isn't good already. They were top 12 last season. A lot of people had them top 8. I would not go that high, but they were pretty good. Losing your most valuable offensive lineman, not your best. Quinn Miners is your best, but your most valuable. It's because of the contract. 1 year left. You're in cap hell, and you got to figure out how to pinch some pennies here. So I have it on pretty damn good authority. The Broncos, kind of like what they did with Russell Wilson, they've approached Garrett Bolles with a new contract. And I think if he would liked what he saw, there would have already been an announcement. And I think because of that, we're entering the combine. I would not be shocked at all if the Broncos gave Bolles' agents a chance to, shop around. You're under contract, but here's permission. See what else is out there. See if you can find a new deal. And if there's something you like and we can work out a deal, God bless. You might be moved on. But it's the unfortunate reality with where you're at. I mean, even I don't even want to speculate because I have people I talk with in Dove Valley and people connected to Dove Valley. But James Palmer, who's really connected to Denver and the NFL at large, he was on the DNVR podcast and said, there's going to be veterans here that are going to be gone because of the salary cap ramifications. Garrett Bolles. And he said, quote, Garrett Bolles does not think he's going to be here next year. Hello. That means something to me. So I think we're not just pulling it out of our butts. There is a lot of smoke there specifically to Bolles. I think then followed by Sutton. So we're on veteran trade watch for those 2 big contracts.
Yeah, real easy. Why would you move on from Garrett Bolles? One, you need the money. It's $16 million in savings if he's not there. Depending on what you do with that, you could trade him and money and get a better pick back. But if you just move on from him, regardless, it's $16 million in savings. 2, he's older. Was he 31, 32 years old now?
He's 32, yeah.
Getting older. 3, and more importantly, maybe most importantly, there's only 1 year left on his deal. So why play him at a $20 million cap hit when you need the money with 1 year left on his deal, and in a year you're just trying to survive anyway? I'm not going into next season with Super Bowl aspirations, and this is the key at my left tackle. No, I'm trying to survive 2024 so I can start my rebuild, and then I can really accelerate that with some extra money from Russell Wilson's contract in 2025, and then I'm cooking with gas in 2026 and ready to go. So that's why you move on from Bolles.
Yeah, and again, pretty good authority. There's been a contract offered that was reneged. Is that the word? So just we'll see. Rebuffed. Yeah. So we're already at 42 minutes. Started a little late, but that's okay. I did see we had that super chat that I kind of rolled past there from.
Yeah, it was Scott came in with some stars and some questions, and we hit on this one, Scott, about the comp picks. I think the only guys that are possibility, one, you can't sign anybody else because they would negate these guys.
You can sign guys who were cut. So I saw that the Jets just moved on from a bunch of guys, like Carl Lawson's had injuries, but because he was waived, he doesn't count to the salary cap or to the comp pick. So that's the bin that you're probably picking from if you want to play the comp pick game.
And why would you do that? You do that as a favor to the players. It makes them a free agent before free agencies because they are not under contract anywhere. Otherwise, the guys have to wait till free agency. But I think the only 2 that are valuable enough that you could sign that could get comp picks are Lloyd Cushenberry and Josie Jewell. And you can't sign anybody equivalent or it's going to cancel that out. Otherwise, you're looking for 5th, 6th, or 7th round picks in 2025, Nick. Would it be the next year or is it 2 years down the road? That was a question we had last night.
Maybe 2025.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So we won't get any picks this upcoming year because we spent big on your Allens, your McGlinchey, your Powers. So
your most valuable comp pick asset is Vance Joseph.
For next season, yeah. Well, I think he has to be at the team for 2 years.
Okay,
so it wouldn't be
this year. He gets hired as a head coach. You'd get 2 third rounders
for 2026.
For 2026,
that one. Yep. So that's how the comp picks work. I would expect the Broncos to be bargain bin hunting for street free agents just because those players are outside of the formula for the comp picks. But going here, 2023 rookie draft class grades from Chad Reuter, who does a great job at NFL Network, along with who else wrote this article? Eric Edholm, who also does a great job. Denver Broncos, 2023 draft class ranked dead effing last. 32 out of 32. not good. Marvin Mims, Drew Sanders, Riley Moss, JL Skinner, Alex Forsyth with Nate Atkins and Jaleel McLaughlin mentioned here. Reuter writes, 2 years ago, the Broncos sent 3 players and 5 draft picks to Seattle for quarterback Russell Wilson and a 4th-round selection, which was also a miss in Owuzurike. They parted with last year's 1st and 2nd-round picks in the deal, which brought them very low return on investment based on Wilson's performance in Denver over the last 2 seasons. Mims jumped out to a big start, posting 113 receiving yards and a score against Washington week 2. He only bested 50 yards twice over the rest of the season, though, as the team's offense stagnated. A healthy sophomore campaign could prove quite productive for Mims. Sanders struggled with tackling early in the season, but was better later in the season with the tackling. Team's remaining picks played very little, with Moss missing time due to injury, Skinner playing 1 snap on defense, and Forsyth failing to see action. McLaughlin ended up being a nice find, gaining 570 yards from scrimmage. It was a bad class at this point. I will say, Scott, and I keep this kind of confusing because I use a class terminology as well, or metaphor with this. The Broncos, I view the first 4 years of a rookie's contract like the entirety of a school semester. You've had a test so far. It's the second week of the school year, maybe third week. You had your first big test. You got a B from Mims, a D from Sanders, F/incompletes from everybody else. Okay, not good. Definitely so far, the class average is bad. 30 out of 2, 32 out of 32 makes sense. But you still have 3/4 of the semester to go to salvage the grades. So I will say that, yes, there are concerns early from this class, without a doubt. And yes, this is going to be do or die for a lot of those guys this season. Like if they're this bad again next season, because a lot of times you don't see the guys come out of nowhere year 3, especially because there's going to be opportunities to be had this year, in my opinion. But I'm not going to be too upset about the grade of this class this close, considering your first pick was pick 63, I think, with Mims. So not too upset, but definitely concerned and a lot of room for growth for these guys.
Yeah, and what are they grading? They're grading on contributions. That's it. What are the contributions from this draft class? Not, hey, what will be the future contributions? You're hoping that Drew Sanders and Marvin Mims take a big step from what they did this year, but it's understandable. I mean, you look at the overall numbers and say you got 11 total starts from your draft class. Okay, that's not good. 4 of those were from Drew Sanders. We saw Drew Sanders start. One of them was Miami game when he was forced into action early. That wasn't good. When he was out there, he wasn't good. From week 5 to week 16, you got 56 yards receiving from Marvin Mims. 56 yards receiving. He had 113 yards, which you love. One on that big catch. He had 2 catches for 113. And after that, he had about 200 yards receiving. So what did you get from your draft class in 2023? You got a good return man. That's it. So when you say 32 for the contributions you got in 2023 from your draft class, you got a good return man. That's all you got. Yes, that's 32. That's a fair grade for where you are in the evaluation process.
I will say Moss and Sanders also were pretty big in the core 4 of special teams this season. They ended up, especially
undrafted free agents, to do those jobs.
Yes, but as we saw in the Super Bowl, it does matter.
It matters, but we're grading like that's not why you. I mean, you can draft those guys, but again,
at least they're getting value.
You get? I got a couple decent special teams players. That's not good enough. You can't build a team like that.
I agree, but I'm just looking for where any sort of value and contribution was, and those 2 at least did contribute in that way. I mean, you weren't even getting that from Skinner so much. Once DTY went down, it's like, man, we're not even getting special teams from this guy. But Moss was a really good gunner for them when he was healthy, and Sanders, especially on kick coverage, pretty good. So at least there's that. But again, not enough to get you anything besides 32 out of 32.
No, and it doesn't mean anything for the future. Again, Moss was hurt badly. He was basically a redshirt year. Skinner was a developmental guy who was coming off an injury too. Mims scares me a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then Drew Sanders, you're hoping to see more. Again, for this class, you need Moss, Mims, and Sanders to take that big leap from year 1 to year 2, and then revisit. Then you grade again. But right now, for the contributions you got from your draft class, 32 is fair. You got a couple good special teams players. You got 1 good special teams player, and then a couple guys that you sign, you know, would normally be UDFAs trying to make a roster, you know, on special teams.
Yep. Long way to go. Honestly, the one right now, I'm not 2023. It's too early to be worried about. 2022 is the one we need to be worried about right now. Benito at pick 64. I think that's a hit, Scott. I know it's very hard at the time, but I was much more of the power Vic Fangio pocket crunching style of defense where Benito, that's not his game. He should not play in that kind of defense, but the much more attacking, simulated pressure oriented type of offense with his pass rush ability, I think that's a hit. So, I'll have strong opinions on here, but I'm not somebody who's going to dig myself in when the evidence points to the contrary. Benito, if he plays like he did last season for pick 64 at a pass rush spot, even if he is just a, designated pass rusher overall, that's just super valuable still. So 64, good pick. Greg Dulcich though, not good. And then you have Damari Mathis and Awazarike. So you're almost getting nothing out of those guys right now. So those are the ones that really you needed two of those guys to hit and be contributors. We talk about need at cornerback. We talk about need at tight end. We talk about defensive line. Those are gaping holes on this team right now from those guys.
And again, going back to my statement I've said several times is you weren't as bad at 1-5. You weren't as good at 6-1. You might not have been as good with Damari Mathis as he showed flashes in his first year, but I don't think you're as bad as he was at the beginning of last season either. So I'm not ready to write off him. You can't write off Dulcich until he's just gone. It's like, okay, that was an entire wasted career because, yes, he could get healthy and he's a pretty good player. After that, again, you're going kind of low. And I think Nick Benito getting what you've gotten out of him in 2 years with the last pick in the second round at 64, that's a hit. That he's doing a good job. Awazarike, is he going to be back?
I don't know what the deal is.
Valerian Turner Yale, I don't have much faith in. Montreal Washington's already gone. Luke Wattenberg on OL could be starting safety. He's going to compete with Forsyth. Matt Henningsen is, for a 6th-round pick, is putting in some decent minutes. And Faion Hicks, I think he's gone already, isn't he?
Yes. So he had a DUI or something too. But yeah, he's gone. That's a 7th-round pick. I mean, I'm not going to get too upset about that. Right. Back to 2023, though, you mentioned it. I see from Deuce from New Orleans says Russ didn't get Mims the ball a lot. The issue was that teams are playing 2 high safety shells a lot. And right now, the only route that Mims can run is a 9. It's a fly route. So until he gets better at creating separation underneath and intermediate versus just running past guys and being schemed open vertically, which there is value to that still. But until he can do that, he's going to be a limited player. And also my biggest concern, they tried to get him the ball. He had hard times with that. He fumbled the ball and was way too loose and weak when he had the ball in his possession. And that was kick returning. I mean, you remember we lost the Patriots game because of him, because he just gave the ball like at the 1-yard line on a punt return. So ball security, man, you cannot have that. So there is some concern for me from Mims going forward. Go ahead. I know you have something to say.
Who's the offensive coordinator from 2022 that I've already wiped? I mean, 2021 under Fangio that I've already wiped from my brain. It was Ed Donatel and
Shurmur.
Pat Shurmur.
Yes.
He was the opposite of Jerry Jeudy in Pat Shurmur's offense. Jerry Jeudy would run motion every freaking play and never got the ball. Marvin Mims, you said they tried to get him the ball, but by God, was it obvious that if he's coming around the corner, they were running a reverse with Marvin Mims, and he was going to get blasted. So part of that was scheming as well. He could be put in some better situations as well. You talk about tells a lot, Nick. That was a tell. I'm staying home, and it seemed like he was getting hit in the backfield on reverses every time. Getting to Kenny real quick, because if we trade Bolles, do we draft a left tackle at 12? And who would you target? If we trade back in the first, what quarterback can fall so we can still get a 5th-year option?
I think that the only left tackle really at 12 would be Olu Fashanu if he falls. And it seems like the NFL media was higher on Olu than the NFL actual NFL people, because now that we're starting to get some sources and people like that influencing the mock draft, Olu is falling. I think that the conversation between Olu and Fuaga is actually very much up there versus that of Joe Alt, who seems to breaking away as the offensive tackle number 1. The reality is, and I have this also on pretty good authority, I think the Broncos are looking at left tackle and right tackle, and they're not going to let I think they view McGlinchey as left tackle, right tackle versatile enough that they're not going to be pigeonholed to just a left tackle. So if, let's say, they absolutely love J.C. Latham and he's the best player on their board at 12, they'll move McGlinchey over to left tackle for a year or two. And I think they're banking on a little bit more structure and pocket integrity from the quarterback, helping McGlinchey this season, because you saw McGlinchey a lot of the pressures this last season where watching offensive line, playing offensive line, you can see where a guy offensive lineman's landmark is when they reach it. And if they reach that spot and they kind of like are playing that spot, and then the pass rusher goes around them because the quarterback's broken contain on the pocket, his back's to the quarterback. He thinks he's going to be here right behind him. No, the quarterback's bailing out the right side. Like, unless you're, Trent Williams out there, it's pretty hard to react to those guys. So you're playing to a landmark. Saw that a lot with McGlinchey this year. So a little bit more in structure quarterback play will help him. And again, I have it on pretty good authority that if the Broncos did take a tackle, right tackle or left tackle on the board, and they would move McGlinchey accordingly.
Amarius Mims could be the guy that rises high at the combine, puts on a show with his athleticism, his size, et cetera, et cetera. That, keep an eye on Amarius Mims, offensive tackle out of Georgia, as a player that could have a good February, and people fall in love with them. Are we going to speed through a mock draft here? I
think
the plan?
We should. Do you want to use the one that you just used just to have it a little different?
Yeah, that's fine. I use Pro Football Network on that one, and I just reject trades because it's too easy to trade down. They way over offer you on trade. Would you like to move from 12 to 15 for a future first? And yes.
Yeah.
I always walk out of there with like 3 2025 first round picks.
Yep. And one final thing here, because we did make it around we'll talk about it on the draft also. So we've obviously talked a lot about quarterback at 12. We've talked offensive tackle. I think the next most likely spot is probably edge rusher. Scott, and why edge rusher? The Broncos are in cap hell. Cooper and Browning are going to be free agents after this season. And you need young players at the most expensive positions on cost-controlled contracts. So offensive tackle, edge rusher, those are two that right now, picking at 12 or even a slight trade back, I think your odds are pretty good of that, it being them. Wide receiver, I just think the bottom kind of falls out after the top three, but cornerback is also on the table just because of the cost control aspect of that, and maybe defensive tackle too. We'll see how Byron Murphy tests. Are you pulling that up, or do I need to pull up the full?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, let me do that here real quick. Do you have any thoughts on that as well? I think it's got to be a position of value, right?
We'll see what happens. I mean, if you like Bo Nix at 12 makes sense. But there should be guys. There'll be good players available at 12, as we're about to find out as we run through this. If you don't like them, you can get a position of value. And again, if you trade Bolles, if Bolles is gone, that changes. It's a deep offensive tackle draft. You need an offensive tackle. That changes the metrics big time.
Yes, it does. All right. So here we are with the Broncos. I don't know if you can see that. I'll update it or zoom in a little bit here. Hopefully that helps. So we had Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Terrion Arnold, Olu Fashanu, Rome Odunze, Keon Coleman there at 11. So now the Broncos on the board. Dallas Turner's available. J.J. McCarthy, J.C. Latham, Talise Fuaga, Jared Verse, Kenyon Mitchell, Bo Nix still here as well, Byron Murphy. I think that if the board fell this way, Scott, it would be J.J. McCarthy
for
the pick here.
J.J. McCarthy here. I would consider him in the top 10. So, again, I like the upside there. If he's not ready to go because he's stepping out of a different offense, but they run a lot of pro stuff at Michigan as well, playing for Harbaugh, that play action, downfield passing, quick passing game, that all fits in his wheelhouse. I would go there. He's 3 years younger than Bo Nix, who turns 24 next week.
Yep.
I'd go my quarterback there. And if I didn't go quarterback in this spot, I'd probably go Dallas Turner. I'd probably get my edge.
I'm between Dallas Turner and Talise Fuaga here. Again, looking at tackle, the thought of Fuaga, who is the best run blocker in this class and with functional athleticism, really good anchor, putting him next to Quinn Miners, teams are going. That would be an unbelievable strength, Scott. You're going to be able to run to the right in pretty much any situation when you have Quinn Miners and Talise Fuaga there on the right side. So let's say JJ McCarthy's off the board here, or JJ McCarthy is not your guy. I would probably lean Fuaga, honestly, I'd probably be leaning trade back because there's enough tackles here I still like. But I think that Fuaga brings a mentality and a versatility. I think he could start at 4 different spots on the line. And I think who was the right tackle last season that went to the Bears?
It wasn't
He went
Broderick
9.
Jones.
No, it was the guy from went 9
Tennessee?
overall.
Was it from Tennessee?
From Tennessee, yes. Tulisa Fuaga is a more refined, more explosive, stronger version. Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright is the name, I believe. I think Fuaga is kind of a similar vein there, and I think he's a better prospect, better in pass protection than Darnell Wright. So
now
I think Fuaga would make sense here. If
now
it's not quarterback.
I always like having a line graph for my grades because it shows you the tiers of guys. If Bo Nix, because you can't just say, oh, well, Bo Nix is in the 20s, because by sight, that tells me if I'm willing to take him at 20, I'm willing to take him at 12. But if I've got a tier and I've got a grading system and it goes from green to yellow at this spot because there's a definite delineation in my evaluations. Let's say I've got at this spot I've got him. He's at 23, but he goes all the way down to a 79 because I just think there's a big drop off. Then I wouldn't do this. But if there's a fairly linear line, if I've got Bo Nix near this, I'm going quarterback either way at this spot. Now, Bo Nix, if he's a second round grade, I'm not taking him at 12. I'm not reaching there. But if I've got him a first round grade, I'm coming out of this with my quarterback if it's close because the need, the position, all of that stuff, I'm okay going quarterback here either way. But I would take J.J. McCarthy over Bo Nix.
I would as well, and that's what we're going with here. Broncos now don't pick until 76. I'm excited, Scott. I really hope that we do have some moves around here because I would love for the Broncos to have some other options and picks, but we're going with JJ McCarthy here. Oh, multiple picks. We're saying no to that.
It's so easy to trade down. It becomes just it's just addicting.
It's it's always pretty hard to say that. So we're at pick 76 now, or excuse me, 81. I thought we had pick 76. Huh. Okay, well, maybe it's the difference between which pick the Broncos are giving. It could be the Saints pick or the Broncos pick. I don't think the official draft order is out yet. So that's we're now here at 81. I thought it was going to be 76. Looking at the board, we got Michael Hall Jr., Devontae Walker struggled a bit at the Senior Bowl. Peyton Wilson, if you're looking for a linebacker, you just took one, though. Cade Stover's a good. Here's that.
King has dropped like a rock. Betting on the upside there.
Yep. Here's that offensive tackle I was talking about, Scott. Kieran Amagadeji. Who's just an absolute mountain of a man. Man, I do not love the way the board looks here, unfortunately. Junior Colson also, there's some good linebackers here. Jalen Wright's a really good running back, but I think 2025, Scott, I think like something like 12 of the top 14 running backs in yards last season are back in college this year. So 2025 is going to be a running back year. There might not be one in the top 50.
More money as a number one on a big college team as opposed to a 4th or 5th round pick.
Yeah, I'm with you. Theo Johnson, still a really good option here. Roger Rosengarten, a solid one as well. Marshawn Nealand. I don't know why he's so low here. I really like him. I might bet that he's going to fall still, but he is big.
Your
and
next pick's at 121. There's options on the board there for sure.
But I think the best one here for me is Michael Hall. You need defensive tackles. He's rated very highly here, and he a little bit small, but he can get after it. I really love the tape from Michael Hall. I think he's going to go somewhere, pick 50 to 60. So to get him at 81 is a big get.
Yeah.
Former very highly rated recruit as well. And I just really like his tape. He's a really good player.
It's good value, and your defensive line is a shambles.
So going there with him. We'll see what happens when the Broncos finally pick here. Okay, we're going to reject everything. Okay, so we're on the board here. Defensive tackle run starts to happen there. Blake Corum, Jalen Wright's available. Malik Washington's a little bit too close to our Marvin Mims. You still got Theo Johnson. You still got Rosengarten. You still got Marshawn Nealand here. I like Rosengarten.
Did Pearsall go?
Pearsall
140.
I don't see him down here. It looks like he's gone. I really like Javon Baker as well. But for me, how this one sets up, if you're desperate for a running back, I love Jalen Wright. He might be the best pass protecting back in this class as well. Marshawn Lloyd had a good time, but I think the pick for me comes down to Theo Johnson and Marshawn Nealand. I love the athletic profile for Theo Johnson Scott. I don't want to label it, but watching him, you see the athlete. I worry that the S term is on him. The S word. I
Soft.
I wonder if he's a little soft. I know that's a dangerous thing to say, but I watch him and I get Noah Fant-ism, where it's like you should be much more dominant than you are. So it's a mentality thing there, but I need my tight ends to be glass eaters, and I don't know if I see that from Theo Johnson.
Yeah, you can get Adam Troutman types for that for cheap. For 4th round, if I can get a good receiving threat that you were hoping to get from Greg Dulcich, it's good. It's still good value in the 4th.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna have to go with my guy though. I like Marshawn Kneeland. Really attacking the defensive line here, and you need
it
multiple
could be
guys.
a nice replacement because while Cooper and Browning might not get huge contracts, they could still get $8 to $10 million. That's that next level. That's that B edge rusher, which I think they're both in that neighborhood. And or I could get similar for a couple $100,000 for $1 million here in a draft.
Yep. I am with you in that one all the way. So now we're on the board again. I really thought Marshawn Lloyd had a good time at the Senior Bowl.
Layden
Or not.
Robinson's a good interior lineman. Bo
Yes,
Limmer's a pretty good center. You watch him against Tavondre Sweat when Sweat in the one-on-ones when it was just fire and go and he had trouble. In team situations where it was more realistic, where it's a run pass option and combination blocks and getting to the second level, Bo Limmer was good. He was really good. So you watch him and say, oh man, Sweat destroyed that guy. Well, I watched him go against Sweat when Sweat didn't know what was coming and Bo Limmer was winning.
I'm going to go with I'm going to placate to everybody in here. And actually, we got 2 picks here really close. So, Scott, I'm going to give you one, and then I'll take the next one. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to take McCaffrey on one of them. Yep. So I think he'll probably still be there. I think that the Titans will not take him. So do you want to take Robinson or Limmer here? Just another shot on the interior?
I think Bo is your center, and Layden Robinson is a good guard also. Gives you the option to move on for Powers after 2024 also.
Thinking about this like a team, who offers most versatility? You're talking about a round 5 pick. You need somebody who can wear multiple hats. Can either of these guys both play center and guard?
Not interior lineman typically. I mean, usually you can move a center to guard. You don't typically move a guard to center. Just with the technique involved.
Does Limmer have the ability to move?
Bo Limmer was let me see how big he was. He was on the American squad. Arkansas Limmer. He was 6'4.5", 301 pounds. And then Layden Robinson was 6'3", 3.5, 3/8, with 33.5-inch arms, 311 pounds. So they were both second level guys.
Okay, well, I might actually. You want Luke McCaffrey?
Yeah, I think you need a wide receiver also, and someone that's a pure wide receiver instead of just a traits guy.
Versatility, leadership, high floor, character. My guy here that I'm going to take. So we'll go with Luke McCaffrey here, and I'm going to guess that they don't take the guy that I want, which is good. Yep, they took Layden Robinson. That's fine. A guy that I think would have been a top 100 pick if not for the injury. Might miss the season, but that's okay for me down here. I know it's, oh man, take another injured guy, but Zach Zinter, going to play guard, played right tackle. There is some center talk as well. I think he could play 3 or 4 spots.
Justin, he's so underrated.
Who are we talking about?
Justin Aboigbe out of Alabama is really, really underrated for me.
Okay, I'll have to take out some work on him. So now we're on the board again here with the 6th round. Guys that stand out for me, Gabe Hall, and the one that really stands out for me here is Sion Vaki, Utah. They actually played him at running back this year as well at Utah. He's a really good athlete. He's still pretty new to football, and he is going to be a special teams dynamo. I think he's going to probably go up in the top 120, honestly, when it's said and done.
We didn't take Theo, did we?
We didn't take Theo Johnson.
You didn't take Theo? I might go 6'7", Brevin Span Ford at 6'7", 270.
He's
really
so
good receiving option. I know you said he's soft, but it's the 6th round, dude.
I know. God, it drives me nuts when I watch a tight end who just get your hands in there. Oh, how about Jarvis Brownlee, also still available?
Not a bad corner. Yep, there's your special teams guy too.
I think the best value is Vaki here. Especially because you
Yeah, you
might
need a safety. You'd absolutely need depth at safety.
also you might be missing Delarian Turner-Yell for the entirety of next season because he suffered an ACL the last special teams. You're talking 6th round here. He's tore his ACL the last game of the year.
No, I'm just
Um,
saying, are you counting on him even if he was healthy? I'm not, but you're right. That could be. DTY is going to miss the season. He's not going to be back from December or January. He's not going to be back by August from an ACL.
Yeah. So I go Vaki here with that one. So there it is. Gabe Hall would have been fun too. I see Zach Power says Gabe Hall, but I ended up just taking Michael Hall there on the defensive tackle spot, and I was looking for a little bit more versatility. We need multiple defensive tackles, but Vaki was far and away. The Broncos, I think they're in a position where they can't be picky. The roster is bad. You got to trust your board and take good players that you think are going to take a chance to hit. So that's what we did. We took a quarterback here. We took 2 defensive tackles. We took an offensive lineman who is versatile as well. So I don't know. I think this is about, I would give this an A. I think you took probably, I mean, obviously, I picked it. This is a great job, Nick. But I think this is as overly optimistic as it could be.
Yeah, I think coming out of 12, I've said you're either going to come out of this with a prospect, an exciting prospect at a position of need, or a quarterback prospect. And again, it's the quarterback is riskier, but the reward is higher. And I'm going high risk, high reward on JJ McCarthy here.
All right, well there you have it. Yeah, thank you, String Guy. I did a good job here. Oh, I gotta throw my shoulder out, pat myself on the back. Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Scott. And also, Michael comes in the start, says, great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for Breakfast. Go Broncos. Appreciate everybody so much coming in here. I got to go. I got to make sure the wife is doing okay with the little guy in here. But make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at, I can get rid of that. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendall MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And subscribe, like, and share over on social media. Appreciate you, Scott. Thanks for joining again this morning, and a lot of fun with Broncos country here. Talked about the Broncos draft class from last season, ranking really poor. Too early to freak out, but we're a quarter through the semester, so it's going to be pretty hard for everybody to get A's when it's that poor early on, but we'll see. And the Broncos, if it's not quarterback, I'm thinking it's probably your value cost controlled spots, offensive tackle and edge rusher. Those are the ones. Yeah. If it's not that, it's got to be that.
And we're going back. The theme is improvement from year 1 to year 2. That goes for the draft picks. That goes for the team. We can't discount the improvements that these guys are going to naturally make in a second year under a new coach. And that's one of the things to look forward to for this season. I want to say thank you to our Super Chat superstars. Quentin Caldwell came in, Michael Ranquillo several times, Lawrence Rivera a few times, Gary Palmer, Scott Poynton, and Kenny Booker, KB82. Appreciate y'all for helping to keep the lights on and keep my forehead nice and shiny.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Gotta get on out of here. We appreciate all of you. Make sure you continue to use kindness, compassion, and as always, go Broncos.